PixMix is brought to you by the Arun Meta Show, broadcasting on Liberated Syndication, youtube.com/Arun Meta Show, and is in association with the Old School Lane podcast.
PixMix is brought to you by oldschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with the Arun Meta Show.
Welcome to PixMix with Arun.
And Patricia.
Hey Patricia, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you. Definitely looking forward to today's episode, that's for sure. Especially since we had to go through last time's episode of Cars.
Yeah, I think this one is, I'll tell you what, actually, I have been looking very much forward to this episode because I think this is a movie that's been in quite high demand, and I think it definitely was at least better than I would say its predecessor. So, and I tell you what, it's been massively talked about recently, actually, would you believe? So it's actually
really? How
yeah.
so?
Well, yeah, it's apparently it's been pretty popular on Instagram. It's made the rounds on social media. It's actually created quite a lot of buzz. So everyone's wanting to talk about it. So shall we get right into it and see what everyone's currently raving over?
Yes, and spoilers, it's not Cars 2.
No, definitely not. It is the absolute classic Boo, and let me just say, hey, wait a minute. This ain't right. What the hell is this?
I was about to say. I don't know. I mean, yeah, what is this movie? I don't recall that I've seen a spin-off of the Monsters, Inc. that was actually good.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's like, okay, so I think everyone knows that we're let's just cut to the gist of it, actually, just stop wasting everybody's time, but I thought it'd be best just to bring this up, because as everyone has probably seen, there's been this thing that's been going around. It originally started on Instagram, and then it made the rounds and around social media, and everyone was then speculating that there was going to be finally a Monsters Incorporated sequel known as Boo, which is going to basically star an adult version of Boo. But if you look potentially closely, you'll notice that she looks quite Elsa-like.
Yeah, I was just about to say, she looks like Elsa.
Yeah, so I thought I'd just make like a little bit of a mock-up about it, because Patricia, I mean, how cool would it actually be to talk about this movie? I should tell you, even better than talking about Monsters University.
Oh my god, yes, please do so. I already said in the Monsters University PixMix episode that this is the movie that we should have had. And I think I did briefly talk about towards the end when we were talking about how much money it made and the reviews and overall, that originally there were supposed to be a Monsters Inc. sequel that would have had Boo grown up or something, but for some reason they didn't do it. I think it was tossed around for a couple of years until the idea just pretty much fell through, which sucks so much. And I know that the person who voices Boo, Mary Gibbs, I know that she's not technically a voice actress, because the reason why she got the role in the first place is because her father was one of the animators of Monsters Inc. and Pixar. And I think he's possibly retired, and nowadays she's a yoga instructor. If you follow her on Instagram and Tumblr, by the way. And she's also coming to Florida SuperCon next month. So if you're interested in meeting up with her and possibly showing that people really want a Boo sequel, then please do so. Maybe it'll get Pixar to wake up and say, people want this.
Yeah. Okay, let's try this again, shall we?
Yes, let's do this.
Welcome to PixMix. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Patricia.
Hey, Patricia, how you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, I feel like we've done this before, but for some reason I just can't seem to remember.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, well, I think we need to do this again because obviously with the fake movie that we ended up having to deal with. So let's actually deal with the real movie this time. And I don't know, this movie feels a bit fishy to me, Patricia.
Yes, it's definitely fishy, and I think we need to find the source of it.
Yeah, so let's get on with it. After the success of Finding Nemo, many people were wondering when on earth we were going to get a sequel, and it definitely was being trumpeted up by Ellen DeGeneres, who spends basically the Ellen Show going on and on about wanting to do a movie for starring herself as Dory, and finally Disney Pixar caved in, and we finally got the incredible sequel known as Finding Dory.
Yeah, I remember when every few months or years or so, Ellen would be talking about, let's do a Finding Nemo 2, where we focus on Dory. She's been saying this for years. And every single time people would get excited and more excited. And then eventually it happened. And everybody was really excited about it because we talked about this in the Finding Nemo PixMix episode, that it is an incredible movie, no pun intended. It's a fantastic movie that has memorable characters, a unique setting, a wonderful story about a father and son. It's just amazing. And I've already talked about how much I absolutely love this movie. And the fact that this was getting a sequel, I mean, I was excited, but then I was a little bit skeptical because this was coming out shortly, like right after, right after the dark age of Pixar movies, when they were just churning out really, really mediocre movies. And I was very skeptical about how Finding Dory was going to come out, and if it was going to match up to the success and quality of Finding Nemo. You want to know what the funny thing about this movie? Right before this came out, there were so many people on Facebook who were posting about this when this movie was coming out, and they didn't want a whole bunch of kids to see it, and they'll be like, nah, you stay at home, this is our movie. Kids who are born in the 2010s, they're not excited about this. The kids who were born in the late 90s and 2000s, we know where it's at. So I don't want no annoying kids to cry or scream when they're watching this. I want to enjoy this for myself. So I'm like, oh my God, this is ridiculously stupid.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's like the same vibe seems to have come from The Incredibles 2 at the moment as well.
Yeah, exactly. The same thing happened for The Incredibles 2, in which they're telling the kids, nah, man, we've been waiting for this sequel for almost 15 years. You got to stay home. This is my movie. It's like, why are you dumping down on the kids? They want to see this movie just as much as you do, even though that you grew up with it as a kid.
Mm-hmm. I just think some people are just not grown up yet. And so, which includes probably both of us as well. So anyway, before we get into Finding Dory, we always have to do the attached short film, and this one is quite a unique one, and it is known as Piper. Piper is a short film.
Yes, I think I remember. I remember when I first saw this short. It actually was leaked online even before Finding Dory came out.
Actually, I didn't see it until the movie actually came out in the cinema, so I didn't get to see the YouTube leak that much. I mean, I think they did tease like a clip, I think, before the leak came out, I think, and then I saw the clip.
They did talk about that. They talked about that. It was about this cute little bird in the ocean, and it was like playing around in the sand. They did show a clip of it, but then, like, shortly before the movie came out, it was leaked online.
Mm-hmm. And even though it was leaked online, it didn't stop people from going to go and watch it, I guess. And so, mind you, I think we all know what they were going to say before Piper. But I mean, yeah, I thought it was a nice, cute short to start with, and it's definitely. I think there was like some interesting iconography, I think, in that. I mean, it's a little bird who is basically trying to find his feet and go through his basically first salvaging of food, and obviously he has to contend with the ocean and other basically how you get food and things like that as well. So it was nice, and it was fun that it was basically on on the edge of the ocean on the beach before we actually ended up in the ocean for the main movie. So I think it was good play.
Right, exactly.
I think it was good setup. I think, and so that was it was a
Yeah,
nice little
yeah.
shot.
Which we always talked about in PixMix about how we always appreciate that the short was very distant from the movie that we're going to be watching. But in this case, it actually works because it's about a bird. It's not about a fish in the ocean. It's about a bird who's like wandering around in the ocean, very curious and like digging around the sand and stuff like that. And it actually is really charming and cute. It definitely is a nice little lead up into Finding Dory, which takes mostly the place, well, in the ocean in the beginning, and then later on we'll talk more in detail about it. But yeah, it's actually very nice.
And funny enough, it's actually one of the Easter eggs in the main event.
Yes, it is. Which is actually a very nice touch.
Yeah, very good indeed. So that was Piper, and it got a 2017 Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film. It also got an Annie Award for Best Animated Short Subject, and Advanced Imaging Society Luminaire Award for a nominee for Best 3D Short. So actually, I tell you, was it one of the first shorts to actually go 3D? Thinking about it, because
Oh, that's a good question, and I don't think is it, because I mean, maybe it could have been the first that went 3D. You could be right.
yeah,
Because I
well,
think this was when 3D in theaters was like starting to really boom up in popularity.
yeah, we'll have to look over all the 3D re-releases of Pixar films, I think, and see if, mind you,
Yeah.
if it's a re-release, then you can't really
That's
say
true.
that the first thing came out in 3D, can you? So I guess that wouldn't count. So,
Hmm.
anyway, Finding Dory. The film opens with Dory as a baby in a tank playing with her parents, Charlie and Jenny. The scene then cuts to baby Dory being lost in the ocean. As Dory grows up on her own, she asks many fish to help her find her way back to her family, only to forget what she was asking them for help for. And this eventually leads them to the part in Finding Nemo where she meets Marlin. So, I would say a good setup, I guess, to finally put the two
Yeah, when
together.
I first saw this movie, I was a little bit afraid that it was going to be rehashing Finding Nemo, because you can't help that, when you see Finding Dory, she's a little fish and she's forgetful and her parents are being really overprotective. It definitely reminds me of Marlin being really overprotective with Nemo because he has the little small fin from the first movie.
hmm I was a bit worried though because obviously going into it because it was a good setup that they basically said, okay, here's Dory meeting Marlin, and then they just left it at that. And then if you wanted to find out what happened to that, obviously you go watch Finding Nemo, and just kind of left it at that. Which I'm glad that they did that. I think if they went in the direction of rehashing basically what happened in the first film, it kind of the beginning of it ends up kind of being like Lion King 1.5. When you remember when it basically tells the story from Timon and Pumbaa's side of the Lion
Oh
King.
yeah,
Yeah,
I remember that movie.
yeah, and that would not be a good sign if they ended up rehashing that. And so,
Oh man, that would have been really bad.
mhm.
Like, we would have seen if Finding Dory would have told from Dory's perspective of how she first met up with Marlin and then her views about looking for Nemo. That would have been awful.
Yeah, because I mean, we already knew what her views are, because she was in the
Exactly,
Finding
we already
Nemo.
knew that. Yeah, the focus. What I love about Finding Nemo is that because there are so many characters, we were able to get just as much attention to the ones that really mattered, and the ones that were on the side, they got their own little quirky personalities, which is something that I wish Cars would have taken consideration of, because there were so many characters on Cars, but yet we've pretty much forgotten most of them except for Lightning McQueen and Mater.
hmm So the story cuts out. So they get to that part, and then they cut to 1 year later, which I think is pretty standard, I guess, for a sequel film. And
Sure.
yeah, I tell you what, actually, it's probably better than what they did with. Do you remember with Star Fox when they went from Star Fox 64, and then they went 7 years later to Star Fox Adventures, and it's
Oh
like,
my
yeah,
God, yeah. They all the way up until like what was it, Star Fox Assault?
yeah, it was, and then it went to Star Fox Command, and then they rebooted it after that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly, pretty much. But yeah, that was like a massive jump. But I'm glad that it's kept until 1 year later because we see the same surroundings. We have Dory, we have Marlin, Nemo, we see Mr. Ray and all of the other fish students, and it's the same surroundings, so we do get to, for people who have grown up with Finding Nemo, it's very comforting to know that they don't have to worry too much about a huge time jump, because when did this movie come out again? Like 20, what was it, 2016? What was it?
It was release date was, oh good grief, there's a load of release dates. If we're going on the American release date, it was no, oh no, was it November 15th, 2016? I'm not too sure. I think that's the
Yeah,
actual.
20, yeah,
No, no,
yeah,
no, no, no. Actually,
2016.
I lie. Sorry, I lie. It's June 17th, 2016. The November 15th was
Okay,
the
so yeah,
Blu-ray release.
it's okay. Regardless, it's still 2016.
Yeah,
So, Finding Nemo came out in
2003.
2003.
Mm-hmm.
So that okay, so 2003 to 2013, that's 13 years later. So and it's a good thing that they have like the majority of the celebrities to reprise their main roles, with the exception of the kid who played as Nemo. They got another kid, which makes a lot of sense. Same thing with the Incredibles 2, in which they got another kid to play as Dash. But yeah, basically, instead of like a huge jump cut between like how long it took from the first movie to the last one, they actually do have a nice progression, and we get to see what things are going on. Like Dory's living close to Marlin and Nemo, and she wants to help out, but unfortunately she still has her short-term memory loss and she can't do a lot.
And so they obviously set the scene for who Dory is, which I think is good because one thing that's great about this film is that they reset up Dory, but they don't do it where even if you did watch the first film, it was kind of like I wouldn't say a new twist. It was like it was a refresher, but it wasn't like boring if you think about it. So, I mean, even
Yeah.
if you had watched Finding Nemo and you knew what to expect, you still were kind of surprised by Dory when they were basically re-explaining her character in the first act. So,
Mm-hmm.
so Marlin and
Yeah,
Nemo. Sorry.
basically, yeah, you're right, because for people who may have not seen the first movie and they don't even know who she is, then it's kind of like a nice introduction to her. And with the way that Dory's acting, she could have been easily annoying or infuriating for people, but no, because they were able to write her character very well, and because of Ellen DeGeneres' amazing performance, she's able to become such an endearing character.
Yeah, I was gonna say they didn't do that in Cars 3, did they? When you think about
Of
it,
what?
in Cars, they didn't really explain Lightning McQueen again. I don't
No,
think.
they didn't, because Lightning McQueen, especially for us, since we didn't see any of the Cars movies past just that one. I mean, we saw Cars 3 first, then we saw the first one, and we still haven't seen the second one.
Hmm.
But yeah, when we saw Cars 3, I mean, we already kind of knew about Lightning McQueen and him being a racer, but we didn't know anything about his backstory. We didn't know anything about his winning streaks, and we didn't know anything about his reputation. The only thing that we did see was that at toward the beginning of the movie, he was like really excited for his race, and then he's like pointed out saying, "Oh, you're a washed up has been." It's like, but what happened? What was the previous races like? It would have been nice if maybe we would have had like a flashback of maybe the two previous movies of him racing and winning a whole bunch of competitions and stuff like that. But we never got that. And we never got the story of his mentor either until toward the scene in which he was like looking back on like the newspaper clippings and the film, but we still didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, and on top of
It
that as
was
well, I
very
mean,
vague.
yeah, it was, and so here, I mean, Finding Dory, here's the right way to do it. So,
Yeah, and so is Toy Story 2. Toy Story 2 is also another good movie that you can watch, and you don't really need to know about what happened in the first movie because Sid's not in it, and it's just the introduction of Buzz and all that stuff. You get a new villain, you get a new setting, and you can see the movie just fine, but it would really help if you did see the first movie. Monsters University. Ugh,
oh
I
my
mean, it is
goodness.
a prequel, but and it does lead up into Monsters Inc. But it's still not a very good movie. But at least it does tell you on what it is, that it's a prequel, that it takes place before Monsters Inc. And I think that did slightly better than what Cars 3 did for Cars 1 and 2. So yeah, I would say that Cars 3 was probably like the worst sequel in terms of introducing newcomers into the previous installations if they've never seen it.
Hmm. Anyway, going back to Finding Dory. So Marlin and Nemo accompany Dory on a quest to go and with the help of Crush, they ride the water current to California. On arrival, they're forced to flee from predatory giant squid that nearly devours Nemo. Afterwards,
Okay, I actually have a question about that.
yeah.
So let me get this straight. They swam all the way from Australia to California.
Hmm.
That is a long swim.
Yeah, but isn't the idea of like the finding what do you call the Finding Nemo? Is it like the Finding Nemo world? I guess you can call it.
The
I,
Finding Nemo world.
yeah,
Well,
well,
basically, like, remember that they were off in the coast of Australia, right? And they went through the EAC, the East Australian current, so they can go over to Sydney. What
yeah.
current did they take so they can zoom themselves all the way to California?
Yeah, I think that was like the thing in like the whole like Finding Nemo, Finding Dory world is that apparently there's like really strong currents that basically just drag you all around the world. I think.
That
And
would be
so,
amazing if we were to have something like that in real life, like the Futurama like pods that you can be able to go anywhere really quickly without traffic.
yeah, I was gonna say, imagine if we had that. It's like I don't want to live on this planet anymore. But oh my goodness, so fish were all
Anyways, we
doing that.
continue.
The only thing she remembers about her parents, and she wants to go on this quest to go find them, and so they do so, and they go towards California, and they nearly get eaten by a squid. So as you can tell, normal service has been resumed in regards to Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. Dory travels to the surface to seek help and is rescued by the Marine Life Institute after being caught in a six-pack ring, becoming separated from Marlin and Nemo. So basically, it's mind you that did kind of give like a bit of an omen of like now it's Dory being captured instead of Nemo.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's Dory captured instead of Nemo, and instead of going over to a dentist's office, they go over to a Marine Institute, who's narrated by Sigourney Weaver.
do you know what it feels like? It feels like they did like like those like consumer like review panels, like like those customer review like groups. Like, oh, what are
Yeah,
they
yeah,
called?
yeah.
Like where they want to test like a new product. So basically, they showed people like Finding Nemo first, and then they were kind of like, oh, well, does it really have to be a dentist office? Can't it be like a marine rescue place? And like, that one person who puts his hand up and kind of like ruins the whole show. It's kind of,
Yeah, I guess. I mean, some people were actually kind of wondering about like why Sigourney Weaver. I guess for those who live in America, and if you're wondering, Sigourney Weaver is actually the voice narration for the Planet Earth series if you watch it on DVD. But if you watch it on TV or if you live in the UK, then it would be the same person who did it, David Attenborough.
Mhm.
But yeah, Sigourney Weaver did actually do the narration for Planet Earth, and I guess it kind of makes sense that she would do the narration for, the marine life and talking
Yeah.
about like, taking care of the animals and then rescuing them and then releasing them.
I understand why they need to regionalize things to kind of make things a bit more familiar, but I still don't like it. I like the idea of like the movie being in its one form. Like it just because it kind of makes people kind of like argue about which Finding Dory is like the definitive Dory, like the Dory that is like in its original form. If you think about it, instead of like saying like, oh, well, here's the UK version of imagine if like and I know a joke about this quite a lot. So in Hey Arnold the Jungle movie, like imagine if I ended up in the UK version. Like there was
Yeah.
like a fake version of me. It's like, and there's me in the film. And it's like, and I say, oh, I used to be in Hey Arnold the Jungle movie. It's like, well, I no, you're not, Aaron. I watched it in the US, and it's like, oh no, I'm in the UK version. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
okay then.
yeah, yeah. You're it's Markiplier's in the U.S. version.
Yeah, it's like it's I don't like that to be honest. Like,
Yeah, I mean, but then again, it's all about the culture. It's all about what's familiar with
mm,
each individual culture. Like we did talk about in Inside Out about how when Riley was eating the pizza, it was broccoli in it, but in Japan, it's green peppers because they don't like green peppers. And in Zootopia, it's like a bear. or no, a moose in the American version, and then in the Japanese version, it's a bear. Yeah, it's a bear.
Yeah.
So
Well, and also
it
it's
depends
and
on the
on top of
culture.
that as well, it's a panda bear in China as
Yes, it's a
well.
panda bear in China, right?
Yeah. So and yeah, it's just it's again, I just don't like it.
Yeah,
It just
I
kind of
know. It's
yeah. It's just,
But anyway, but yeah, I'm really glad once again that they didn't do a. I know that it at first it seems like a rehash. It's like, oh, Dory's been captured and she's been taken away, and it's up to Marlin and Nemo to save her. But I'm glad that it's not like, oh, now she's being taken over to the aquarium of a doctor's office, or oh, she's been taken over to like a fisherman, and now she's being surrounded by other fish who have been captured. But no, it actually makes a lot of sense that she would be going over to some place like like a marine institute, because there's a lot of fish there. There's a lot of opportunities to look around, and there's a lot of varied locations. So it actually keeps the setting fresh.
hmm So Dory is sent into quarantine and is tagged, and there she meets a grouchy tentacled octopus named Hank. And
Yes,
and this is
Hank.
yeah.
Basically, he's like the Gil of the set of this movie, in which, like, he's really grumpy and he wants to be left alone, and it's kind of like a reverse, because Gil wanted to be in the ocean, but Hank wants to be in a tank because he doesn't want to be in the ocean because he doesn't want anybody to touch him.
hmm Dory's act shows that she'll be in a permanent aquarium and is sent to a permanent aquarium in Cleveland due to the traumatic ocean life. Hank wants to continue living in the aquarium, so he agrees to help Dory find her parents in exchange for a tag. In one exhibit, Dory encounters her childhood friend Destiny, and a nearsighted whale shark who communicated with Dory through pipes, and Bailey, a beluga whale who believes that she's able to escolocate. Oh, echolocate.
Echolocation.
Echolocation. Sorry, echolocate. Okay, I didn't. Yeah, you can tell about
It's
the eye
okay.
push.
Don't worry about it.
How's the
But
thing?
you know what? This is another thing that I really like about this movie, is that it gives a huge explanation on everything that we knew about Dory, about where it all came from. Like, why was she able to speak whale? Like, what kind of sense did that make? I always thought that was like funny and random. But no, it actually makes sense on why she spoke whale, because she was her tank buddy. Like, next door, there was a pipe that would lead over to, from her parents' pipe where she lived, and all the way up into Destiny's pipe. So they used to speak whale together. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm really glad that they're going. I'm really glad they made a massive go of this. Like, they and on top of it, do you think Ellen DeGeneres had like a bit of a say in what was going on in all of this? Like, she really wanted this to be Dory's film, and
I
like,
wouldn't be surprised, because we knew how much she wanted this movie to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe she's known about the character and the movie so many times that maybe she would be. It's like, throughout the movie, in which, like, when Nemo is trying to find out, oh, what would Dory do? I wouldn't be surprised if Ellen would be like helping the writers along in the story. It's like, and maybe she was reading the script and she's like, no, I don't think Dory would do that. And you have to think to yourselves, what would Dory do? And then she would like talk about, okay, I think Dory would do this and this and that. So I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if Ellen had a huge part in like Dory's personality and her little quirks into the making of the movie.
hmm So Dory learns from Destiny that she lived with her parents in the in the open ocean exhibit, and make Hank travel with her. She subsequently has a flashback with life with her parents and struggles to improve her memory, which solves certain situations. She then helps Hank get out of the touch pool. They bond with each other, and Hank safely puts Dory into the open ocean exhibit. Thinking about this, you know what this kind of reminds me of at the moment?
What?
This Zelda Breath of the Wild. Because
okay.
if you think about it, because some people who like when he's like Link in the game travels to certain locations to recall like certain parts of his memory that he lost 100 years ago. And like that's kind of what's happening. That's what's kind of happening here. And like, it kind of makes me wonder if Zelda Breath of the Wild was somewhat based on Finding Dory.
I doubt it completely, because there's a lot of video games in which, oh, I have amnesia. I don't know who I am. I'm going to go around and try to find myself. Oh, it turns out I'm the boy of destiny.
Yeah.
But yeah, but no, seriously. But I think that the fact that we have I mean it's even subtly in the movie, in the first movie, in which like um about where she talks about like short-term memory loss, about like, oh, it's in my family, and then she's like, where is my family, where are they, and then she completely forgets about it. It's like it kind of like puts a little tickle into your brain. It's like, yeah, where is her family? Will we ever find out about them? So I'm just really glad that now we actually get a chance to see this in action, and we get like these flashbacks of her parents constantly showing her about the shells, leading her to the right direction of home, and staying away from the undertows, and also this is where Dory learns about the just keep swimming, swimming. This is where she learns it from. She learned it from her mom. She didn't just make it up, and that's another thing that I really like about it.
Yeah, you can see that Dory is starting to kind of be reconstructed when you think about it. Like, before she was like an empty shell, and now they're basically just putting her back together at this point, and giving immersing her character, and that's great because they've really tackled this at the right angle, and they've built her up the way that they should have done for this film. Because wouldn't it have been easier to basically just put Dory in like in a really stupid situation and just make hijinks ensue, like kind of like
Yeah,
kind of like a Rush Hour film.
we would have had a Cars 2 equivalent of Finding Nemo.
Yeah, making Dory a secret agent, and she has to stop it. Yeah, oh my God. Like, yeah. If
We'll have
Johnny,
to talk about that movie eventually.
you
Oh
know,
my
if
god.
if Johnny English wasn't bad enough, just his Johnny Dory or Dory English or whatever.
Dory English.
Dory English, yeah. So, Marlin and Nemo attempt to rescue Dory with the help of sea lions Luke and Rudder, and Luke and Rudder are actually really hilarious in this.
Yeah,
And,
I thought they were pretty funny too. They kind of remind me a little bit of like let's see, they kind of remind me of Nigel from the first movie, in which like he's British and he's trying to help out the other fish to escape, and he's just curious about what's going on. So yeah, those guys are really funny too. And then they constantly berate Gerald, which is a third sea lion who has a derp issue from climbing up into the rock.
Mm-hmm. And it's just funny, like when somebody just climbs up on the rock and they're like off, and he's time to go
My
away.
favorite part of my favorite scene with them is, they're trying to convince Gerald to give them the bucket in exchange for going onto the rock, and then he's just like climbing up. It's like, oh, do you enjoy that, Gerald? Do you enjoy this time here? Pause. Time's up. Get off. Get off. Get off. And then he's just leaving, and then they get the bucket, and that's actually really funny.
Yeah, if Fluke and Rudder really do. Yeah, that's the thing as well. Like, you need characters kind of like to fill things up, because yeah, we've got this drama going on with Dory, but at the same time we need to laugh. Like, and I'm really glad they brought in like hilarious characters to do that. You brought in Hank, you brought in Fluke and Rudder, you even brought in Destiny gets a couple of laughs now and again.
Yeah, I think that Destiny and Bailey they work really well together.
Mm-hmm. So, Dory finally remembers how she became separated from her parents. She had overheard her mother crying out of concern for her, left her home and to receive a shell in hopes of cheering her up, and was pulled away from the undertow. She then learns that the blue tanks were being shipped to Cleveland from quarantine. Dory is given directions to quarantine through pipes by Destiny and Bailey. Bailey finally uses echolocation to find directions, and Destiny echoes the directions through the pipes. Dory reunites Mal. Mind you, before I move further into that, was there ever a Finding Dory video game? Just thinking about it.
Oh wow, that's actually really good question. I have no idea. I'll have to look that up. I wouldn't be surprised if there was,
Uh,
because I do remember there was a Finding Nemo video game for like the GameCube and the PlayStation 2.
Yeah, because like, how good would that be for a level? Like, you got to listen for Destiny's directions of where to go. It's kind of like going through like I know I keep referencing Star Fox in this episode, but like kind of like in the final bit where you have to fly through the tunnels, and James McCloud has to guide you to get through that, and maybe they could have done the same, kind of something kind of like that with Destiny guiding Dory through the pipes, so
Mm-hmm.
and Bailey. So.
Yeah. Okay, I just looked it up, and there is a Finding Dory like app for kids, but there's no console game.
No, that's a bit of a shame because there's definitely some game potential in this thing.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah. So Dory reunites with Marlin and Nemo in the pipe system. Back in quarantine, they locate the tank of blue tangs, who tell her that her parents escaped to search for. Oh, hang on a second, it's echoed then. Hello.
Yay. Yeah,
Uh,
I'm here.
yeah. Okay then. Cool. So I don't know what happened just then. So who tells her that the parents escaped in the search for Dory and never came back? Dory received her parents. Dory believes her parents are dead at this point, and
I remember when I first heard about that scene in which like they're not there, I almost welled up in tears because you have to I remember the scene, and like before the scene before this, you have like the mom who's like really concerned about Dory's like, oh, what happens when she grows up, is she gonna make it into the world? And they're really concerned for her. And you know what, this really touched me because this could be a message for people, especially parents who have a daughter or who have a son who has a physical or mental disability. And I'm sure that they really relate. I think I remember listening to a podcast or read an article about this when they were reviewing this movie, about like it really connected to parents who had a child with a disability, and how it told a really positive message about like encouraging your kids when they do simple tasks and stuff like that. And when I saw that, and especially with somebody like me who is Asperger's syndrome, and who was told right from the get-go that I would never speak, I would never function normally, and my parents would do everything they can to help me. And that when I saw that scene, I really cried. And then when I heard about the that scene in which when Dory finally sees all the bluefish and she's asking them about where are my parents, and they're like, oh, they disappeared, and then we never saw them again. And then she's like almost like spinning, and she's getting a little bit like overwhelmed, the fact that her parents may be dead and she'll never see them again. I was like really welling up.
yeah, I was more kind of like it's kind of hard to describe. I was kind of more like oh, I was kind of like disappointed at that point because I was expecting that, oh, we're gonna see Dory's parents finally, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh no, they might be dead, and it's like, oh no way. And like and at that point I thought they were gonna go like on a like like a story of like, oh, we still got Marlin and Nemo, and they're kind of like your family. And they do that kind of winning that.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of reminds me of a rope. That Family Guy skit, like the one that played right before the Family Guy movie, where Stewie finds his future self on TV, thinking it was his father. They made fun of a Disney movie about a bunny who lost her family, and she meets up with a bear, and you have that song from Randy Newman, who was like talking about like, and the family died and the bear became the new family, something like that. So it would have if that would have been so cliche if that would have been the case, in which, oh, her family was dead for many years, oh, Marlin and Nemo were her family all along. The
hmm
end.
Yeah, it's just it's. I thought that was kind of the direction they were going to go in, but yeah, when they finally when the confusion finally all goes away, she finally comes across a trail of shells. Remember, and then that triggers another memory of when she was young. Her parents used to set out a trail familiar for her to follow all the way back home. At the end of the trail, Dory finds her parents, Charlie and Jenny, and joyfully reunites with them. And I will admit, I cried at this point.
I cried too. Like, not even for a second. Like, she was when Dory was like looking at them. It's like, then even before she said mom, dad, they immediately recognized her, and then they hugged her. It's like it's like that's the instinct about parents, is that even if you haven't seen your child in years, you immediately know that that's them. And and the fact that they hugged and they reunited and they were so worried about her, it's like, oh my god, I just cried. And then they were talking about, like, we've stayed here for years because we knew that you were going to come back, and you came back all by yourself. I'm like, oh, I welled up. I cried. I was like, it was like Inside Out all over again, in which that's, there was just so many happy, like, when that happy scene in which when Riley comes back to her parents, and then they were just hugging together. It's, oh my god, it just made me so overwhelmed.
I have to say, I mean, maybe we should probably do a video of like times we've cried in Pixar films. I guess because
I'm gonna look like a mess.
yeah, I was gonna say because I mean, I think the first Pixar film I think I probably cried over was probably Monsters Inc. I think, and then after that,
Yeah,
it was,
when Sully leaves Boo behind, and then Boo is looking for Sully in the closet, and then he's gone.
oh, I see. It's like, and I think the next one after, I think definitely think the next one after that was no, it's probably Inside Out. And then I think after that it was Finding Dory. So I think they at one point the Pixar made me cry at in Monsters Inc. And I don't think they did it again until like Inside Out. I don't think.
Yeah, that's true because, yeah, let's see. Finding Nemo, there weren't like a lot of like genuinely sad moments. I mean, maybe you could argue about like the scene in which when Marlin finally just gives up, and then Dory talks about like, I don't want you to leave. When I look at you, I can feel it, like her memory coming back. I mean, sure, that could be like a sad moment, but it never really like made me cry. Incredibles, not really much.
No, Incredibles,
definitely not Cars.
Yeah.
Ratatouille.
Well, Ratatouille was. But here's the thing: Ratatouille was a comedy romantic, and
yeah.
For Incredibles was an action comedy. And so, I mean, Finding Nemo and Finding Dory are emotional dramas when you think about it.
Right. Wally could be a good one. Maybe like a tier or two.
Oh, I think. Oh, yeah. Well, I think once we get to Wally, I'm sure we'll find out for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe Wally would be, give a little emotional tweak. That could be one. Let's see. There's Brave, Toy Story 3. Yeah, Toy Story 3. I remember I cried.
Oh, right.
And the scene in which they like going down into the incinerator and they're all holding each other by the hand, and then when Andy tells them goodbye, I cried in that scene. I remember.
Really, I mean, I think in Toy Story 3, I mean, I was expecting them to kind of make it out alive actually. So, I don't know. Yeah, so I think that one was a bit more predictable, I guess. I think it's the ones that kind of, like, really hit you, and they really have to strike the right tone. I think that's...
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so, like, they really catch you.
I did cry a little bit.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, so we get to the reunification of Dory and her parents, and can I just point this out for everybody? I tell you what, this is the genius of Pixar. But Charlie, right? Pixar have found a way to make a fish look bald.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually pretty surprising.
I'm astounded by that, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, and dare I say it's it doesn't. Also on top of that as well, doesn't Finding Dory just take a massive shit over Shark Tale? When you think about it,
no. Finding Dory and Finding Nemo just with their powers combined, they take a nuclear shit all over Shark Tale.
Yeah, it just goes to show how it also shows why one's got a sequel and one doesn't. When you think about it, and
why one is like a beloved classic, and the other one is considered to be the worst DreamWorks movie ever made.
Yeah, it's basically it has Space Jam syndrome basically, where it's like
seriously like the whole Will Smith fish. Like screw you, man.
I know. So, Marlin and Nemo end up getting stuck in the tank, which will take the fish to Cleveland. So, Destiny and Bailey help Dory in rescuing them with great difficulty and a lot of hurdles. Dory, Marlin, Nemo, and other fish in the truck, including Hank, after persuasion by Dory, make it to the ocean. Dory now lives a new life in the reef with her parents, Marlin, Nemo, Hank, and Destiny, and Bailey. And also in a post-credits scene after that, Tank Gang, still trapped in their now algae-covered plastic bags, reach California a year after floating across the Pacific. They are then rescued by volunteers.
How did they live? How did they survive?
I know. It's just it's ridiculous. I don't know
They
why they
would have
brought.
been dead by now.
I don't know why they brought that up. To be quite honest with you.
Okay, so let me get this straight. I mean, I can believe the illogical, you know, chance that like Dory, Marlin, and Nemo were able to travel on Crush and zoom towards a current all the way from Australia to California in no time. But it's just you're tipping the edge of just illogical, just the fact that all of the fish from the first movie were still in the bags a whole year later without food and clean water, and they survived. What?
Well, Patricia, when you really think, if we're really going to go into that territory, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why do fish talk?
What?
And if we're really going to go that far into it, I mean, how on earth are they talking? Like, but
Oh,
yeah.
all right. You know what? Let's just, you know what? I'm just gonna bring up something right before my brain explodes. There's a fun fact that the guy who, one of the guys who was driving the truck, that was, the truck that was driving all the way to Cleveland. That's the kid who voiced the original Nemo from Finding Nemo.
Oh, cool. So, hey,
Yeah, so I'm glad that they brought him back for another role. I'm actually curious about, the original voice of Dash, if they're going to have him, maybe be a minor character in the movie somewhere.
yeah, probably. I probably imagine that they're going to bring him in somewhere. And, so, yeah.
Hmm.
So that was Finding Dory, and so let's just give you the totals before we go into the scores. It did to make it was about $200 million, and this is astounding. It nearly pulled in $900 million at the box office.
Wow, that's incredible.
But Pixar was sitting on a treasure chest this entire time, and Ellen DeGeneres had the key.
Yes.
And they never.
Ellen DeGeneres talked and talked and talked for years, saying, let's do a Finding Nemo 2 where we focus on Dory. And you know what? It worked. I'm just hoping that they would do something like this again in the future. Monsters Inc. 2 with Boo, please. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think we should probably go in there. Hopefully they'll go in that direction. But I don't know. It's like because is it just me, or is like to pick to at this point in time did Pixar have to be kind of forced to make good ideas good? I mean, so make good ideas translate to film, like because
Yeah, and this was 2016, so this was when Pixar was just getting back into the swing of things. They already released Inside Out, and now they're just they were starting to make good movies again. We had Finding Dory, and we had Coco. I mean, sure they stumbled a bit with Cars 3 and The Good Dinosaur, but you know what? At least we knew that they were starting to make good movies again.
hmm And also, just to point on a couple of elements in the film, I think, and this film definitely was gorgeous to look at. It felt so huge being in the ocean again,
Yeah,
and
and not to mention that of all the in the setting of the marine center, looking at all the varied locations from the quarantine all the way up into the open ocean and the kids playroom and the otters and the seals and where they held the whales and then the truck. It was varied, and it definitely was refreshing because with the first movie you had the vastness of the ocean and then you had the dentist scene. So I'm glad that they were able to play up a lot more varied locations, even though that it was technically two again. You had the ocean, and then you had the marine center, and then you had the scene where they were driving in the truck. So I'm glad that it was they were constantly changing. I mean, sure, the settings seem like somewhat rehashes with the ocean, and then one of the characters is captured, and they're locked in a closed location, and they're trapped somewhere and they're going to be going somewhere. With this case, with them going to Cleveland, in the first one they were being captured by a fishing boat. But no, seriously, it was actually much more huger than the first movie, in which like they kept swimming all the way down. And in the second movie, there was like a huge whale chase. Then you had otters, and then Dory and Hank were going Grand Theft Auto on the truck, driving it, careening all the way down, and landing straight down into the ocean where they just set free, and it was just so insane.
It's just freedom, horrible, horrible freedom. It's like, oh my goodness, it was a thrill ride, and it was absolutely incredible to go on with this film. And also, one thing we need to also mention into this is basically the soundtrack, because I mean, obviously we played like the main title in this because we can't play like the main theme of the thing, which was Unforgettable by Sia, because it's copyright claimed, unfortunately. But I mean, definitely that theme definitely sets up Sia to maybe one day do a Bond film, at some point.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Because it was like, when I first heard Unforgettable in that, and I was just basically thinking, the name's Dory, Finding Dory. So, like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Okay, scores. I say, I know we keep going on scores, but I mean, what did we win in this film? Because I'm sure we won something, didn't it?
Yeah, it's really tough because there are a lot of things in Finding Dory that are just as good as the original, but we gave the original a 10 out of 10. So what do we give this movie?
Mm-hmm.
Does it deserve a 10 just like the previous movie, or does it fall short in a couple of things?
I don't know. I think it's a good sequel. I will definitely tell you that. And actually, just before we get into that as well, in June 2016, Stanton mentioned that while nothing is yet planned, he does not rule out a possibility of a third Finding Nemo film, which is saying that he likes introducing new characters. So if we do get another, if we do get another Finding Nemo sequel, then I think it might. Hey, maybe the third one might be named Finding Marlin. So.
Yeah, I would be surprised if it was Finding Marlin. Maybe Nemo's older, and maybe he claims that he doesn't need his dad anymore, and then he goes off and do his own thing, and then Marlin gets captured by something, and then they have to go rescue him. That'd be actually pretty interesting. I just hope that it does deliver the good quality that, this sequel does. And if you have to wait for 15 plus years to make it, then take all the time in the world.
Yeah. So as far as here we go, awards. Let's have a look and see what we got here. I mean, we're looking at Academy. Okay, we got it won a Saturn Award, so that was one thing, and it won an Advanced Imaging Society Luminous Award. So it's won some like area awards. But hang on a second. Are you right there, Patricia?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. So your microphone was moving around quite a bit. So
sorry about that.
Anyway, and so it was nominated for like a lot of a lot of high prestige awards, but really it only took away like some Imaging Society awards and Academy of Science Fiction awards. So
it didn't win the Oscars.
As far as I'm looking at the Academy Awards right now. BAFTA, it got nominated for one. People's Choice Award. Oh, it won some People's Choice Awards, which I think is kind of par for the course, really, for Pixar films. Teen Choice Awards, it won. Visuals. No, I don't think anything about the Academy Awards. Here it is.
What animated movie did win the Academy Awards in 2016?
Well, I'm only looking at the Finding Dory Awards, so I can't really see from here. But
anyway. I'll take a look into it.
Yeah, but let's put some awards on it ourselves. So. I think a well-rounded sequel, definitely a necessary sequel, I think, to explain Dory to us. And in a way, it was kind of like not only just a sequel, in a way, it was kind of like a prequel as well, because it was flashing back to Dory's time when before she went before basically her parents went missing, and it was telling us more about her, and did some good character development, and also gave us a good ensemble of characters to root for. And plus, everyone here felt relevant in the film, and I didn't think there was anyone I think irrelevant to the movie, except obviously for the last scene with the the gang. But so with that being said, I would say. I'd be very surprised if I didn't give it a 10. I think.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 10 as well, because, it's very difficult about which movie do I like the most, this one or the original. And if you heard from the previous episode, I love the original. I really do. But this movie is also just amazing because it's not a rehash, and it focuses on a new character. We have new settings, and it really just tugs at your heartstrings. There were moments in which I just bursted into tears, and I think that it does give a great lesson about the fact that Dory, who has short-term memory loss and basically has like a disability, she's able to do things, she's able to plan things out, and she's most of the times very successful. And that just shows you that how capable she is. And she's mostly supposed to be like the comedic character, the one who like makes you laugh, because in the first movie Marlin was all serious, but Dory was the one who gave us all the laughs. But now in this one, we see that she's just as problematic as Marlin was, going through her problems. And then, but at the same time, she's able to give off a lot of laughs as well. And she's very smart and capable of doing things by herself. And I think that's a great lesson for parents who have a child who is mentally or physically disabled, that they can be able to do things their own ways as well.
Hmm. So that
I
was.
just found the movie that won the Academy Award for 2016. It was Inside Out. So
Oh, okay.
okay, that's very fair.
That is very fair, and pretty much a good way to end another PixMix. So, Patricia, thanks for doing the show with me.
Thank you for having me.
And so for me, Aaron,
And Patricia.
take care, and bye for now.
See you later.